We're now on the top of Pei Zayin Omid Beis, and we're talking about a case of Meuberes. So she undergoes a radical change in her physical body. Why? Because beforehand she had nothing in her uterus. Now she has a fetus in her uterus. So now when she wants to go back to Beis Aviyah, she's very different than she was originally with Beis Aviyah. Avol Zera Einla, in the case where the Bas Kohen has a Vlad from a Yisrael and she's not pregnant, here there's a Havamina that she can go back to Beis Aviyah with the death of her husband Azar and reinstate her status as eating truma. Why? Because Mikara Gufa Srika, Bashta Gufa Srika, nothing changed. So she's going back to Beis Aviyah, the same appearance, looking exactly identical as when she left Beis Aviyah. Is aim love. I would think that she could go back to Beis Aviyah, she could eat truma. Sricha, I need the possible because there ain't long. Mamish wild. Again, if she's pregnant, she can't eat truma, pregnant from the Zar. But if she has a ben from the Zar, she would be able to go back to her husband, to her father's house and eat. Why? Because she left it with an empty uterus and she came back with an empty uterus. There's obviously something more profound here than meets the eye. Simonam lo naseh v'naseh. Naseh v'lo naseh b'vlad. And Yibumu Truma, Simon. So these are all Simonim to help us remember what we learned. Amar Rav Yehuda Mide Askarata L'Rava Lo Nasa Mesim Kechayim L'Nyin Yibu. That if at the moment of the death of her husband, he left a son, and therefore there was no Zika for Yibu, and then his son died. So now maybe she should go back to the state of Zekuka L'Yibu. No, that's not so. Mikal v'chom. From Achilas Truma, I'm going to derive the conclusion that even with the death of her late husband's son, there's no Zika L'Yibu. Everything depends upon the Shas Misa. Uma b'truma. Makom sha'asa Vlad min Arishon ki Vlad bin Hasheni leposa min Truma. We're talking about a Bas Kohen who marries a Zar. She becomes Psula Lechel Truma. Even if her husband dies. Why? Because Vlad bin Arishon ki Vlad bin Hasheni, even though she has no Vlad from her second husband who died, but she has a Vlad from her first husband. Therefore, she's excluded from Truma. And she does not go back to Beis Aviyah. And Lo Asa Mesim Kechayim. If her non-Kohen husband dies and he left a ben, and then the ben died, she can go back to Beis Aviyah to eat truma, because now she has no zera from an ish zar. Now we'll take this to Yibum. Makom shelo asa Vlad min Arisha ki Vlad min Hasheni. She has children from the first husband, no children from the second husband. Her second husband dies, and she's not potur min hayibum based on the fact that she has a son from the previous husband. Is therefore eino din. How much more so? Shelo nasa mesim kechayim. Right. So if the Vlad of Arishon is not Vlad of Hasheni, then how much more so? Lo nasa mesim kechayim. That if she had sons and they died, it's not as if they're alive to pater from Yibum. Such that now, if with the death of the late husband's son, she should go back to the Zika of Yibum. And now the Gemara says that based on the logic of this Kal V'chomer, we should come to the conclusion that she should go back to Zikas Yibum if the husband left her a son, the late husband, who now died. Once she had a state of a heter, she might get married to someone else. Now you can't tell me, well, her son from the previous husband died, and therefore she's now Zkukah Yibum, and that's going to undermine her relationship with her husband. Once we gave her a green light, a license to get married, we can't undermine that. Rabbi Yehuda asks Rava another question. If a Bas Kohen is married to a Yisrael and she has a son from him, and then the son dies, maybe she should be Asura Lechel B'Truva Mikal V'chomer. We're going to have a Kal V'chomer from Yibum. Uma b'mokom shelo osa Vlad min Arishon ke Vlad ben Hasheni lefotra min Yibum. So if she had a child from the first husband, and now she got married to a second husband after the death of her first husband. So we're not going to say that since she had a child from her first husband, she's not going to say that now she doesn't fall for Yibum from the second husband. And yet, also, Mesim Kechayim, she's parted from a Yibum. If after the husband dies, her son, or his son, I should say, dies, then she doesn't fall for Yibum. Is therefore in Truma, Makom Shah also Vlad ben Arishan ke Vlad ben Hasheni leposel ben Truma, that if this Bas Kohen was married to Yisrael and he left her a child, that passes off from eating Truma. And even if I should say, her second husband dies without any children, she does go back to Beis Avia because of the Vlad ben Arishon. Is a no din shenasa mesim kechayim, and she becomes pasul milechel truma, even if the children that she had from the Israel died. That's the Havamina based on the Kal V'chomer from Yibum. Talmud Loma, therefore we need the pasuk v'zera einla b'ha einla. She doesn't have any children from the Zar, and therefore she's going back to Beis Avia, and she can eat Truma. Another question Rabbi Yehuda asked Rava. V'nase Vlad ben Arishon ke Vlad ben Hasheni l'nyan Yibum mikal v'chomer. If she had children from her first husband, then even when she loses her second husband without children, she should be part of Minayibim because of the child from the first husband. I, mamish, don't understand this Havamim. Again, the Gemara is going to try to derive it from a Kal V'chomer, but even a Kal V'chomer has to make sense. What difference does it make if she had a child from a different husband? How is that going to impact on Yibum? She's married to Shimon now, and Shimon dies without children. I don't get it. The whole thing makes no sense to me. So today I'm being brutally honest. I apologize for it. Uma b'makom shelo asa mesim kechayim l'nyan truma. Right? If she was married, this Bas Kohen to a Yisrael, and he died, but he left a son. And afterwards, that son dies. She goes back to Beis Avia di Truma because now she has no Zara. And that means lo also bo mesim kechayim. The mace is a mess, and therefore she can eat Truma. The also Vlad min Arishon ki Vlad min Hasheni. And if she has a Vlad right? A Bas Kohen who was married to a Zar. She has a Vlad. That passes her from Truma. Even if her second husband dies without children, but she has a child from the first husband, who is a Zar, is Eina Choser Beis Avia. That's called Vlad min Rishon, is Kivlad min Sheni. Is Makom Sha'asa Mesim Kechayim Le'inyan Yibum, which means if after the husband dies, the son dies, and she doesn't fall for Yibum, Eino Din Shenasa Vlad Harishon Kivlad min Sheni. There's no reason that a Vlad min Rishon should pater up from Yibum from the Vlad Hasheni. Talmud Lomaru ben Einla v'Einla. This guy died without children, and therefore there's an afila for Yibum. Another question Rabbi Yehuda asks Rav: "V'lo nase Vlad min Rishon ki Vlad min Hasheni l'truma." So the Bas Kohen was married to Yisrael. Her husband died without children. She has a ben from her previous husband. Just one second. Right, she was married twice. Her husband died without children. What's the case? Manasa Vlad min Rishon ki Vlad min Sheni. In other words, again, it's a wild Havamina. I don't get it. The Havamina here of Rabbi Yehuda, based on a Kavachom that we're about to learn, is that even though she still has a Vlad, who's a Yisrael, who's a Zar from her first husband, who was a Zar, after her second husband dies, she goes back to Beis Avia, as if we skip over the marriage and the son that she had from the first husband. And what's the Kavachomer? Ma in Yibum, Makom Sha'asa, Mesim, Kechaim Lefotrim in Yibum. That even if after the death of her husband, her child from that husband dies, nevertheless, she does not fall for Yibum. That's called Mesim Kechayim. But nevertheless, loss of Vlad ben Arichin Kivlad ben Hasheni. If she has two husbands and the second husband dies without children, we're not going to say that since she has a child from the first husband, she's parted from Yibum. With regard to the brother of the second husband, is Makom Shalo Asa Mesim Kechayim Le'inyan Truma. As far as Truma is concerned, we said that Mesim are not Kechayim. So if her husband Yisraeli dies, she's a Bas Kohen, and she has a child from him, but then subsequently dies, she goes back to Beis Avia. So that's called Lo Asa Mesim Kechayim. Is Eino Din, how much more so? Shelo Nase Vlad bin Arishon ki Vlad bin Hasheni. That as far as the Sheni is concerned, she has a brand new Baal, and he dies without children. She should be able to eat Truma after his death, even though she has Zera from her first husband, who's a Zar. Talmud Lomar Ein Lo, V'Zera Ein Lo, V'ha Yesh Lo. Even though she doesn't have a son from the second husband, she still has a son from the first husband that passes her for Truma, and she cannot go back to Beis Avia. Hajan Alecha Yesh Mutaris. Okay, now for tomorrow, Mirz Hashem, we'll start the 10th parak. Isha Shalach Bailam Dina Sayam. So I think tomorrow we'll need a little extra time to make up for this, the end of Daf Pei Zayin of Beis. So let me know if perhaps you would have a little extra time, or maybe to start at 8, by 15. Okay, then have a great day. Thank you so much.